At 5:16 a.m. local time, the bridge of the USS George Washington is wrapped in the kind of silence only a naval vessel at sea can carry. Voices stay low. Red lights glow softly across the room. Outside, the ocean is dark and almost perfectly still, with only the faintest line of horizon separating sea from sky. Then the radar picture shifts. 5 surface contacts appear nearly at the same moment. They are not scattered, they are not random. The formation is tight, deliberate, and precise. Each contact sits on a slightly different bearing, and each one is picking up speed. Inside the Combat Information Center, the watch supervisor leans closer to the display. Speed readings update one after another. One contact jumps, then another, then all 5. Multiple surface tracks are closing in. No one shows emotion. They do not have to. The tone of the room says everything. On the bridge, the officer of the deck studies the display in silence. The distances are still acceptable for the moment, but the geometry is not reassuring. These ships are not simply passing through traffic lanes. They are shaping the space around the carrier. 5:17, a report comes up from CIC, short and exact. 5 contacts. Formation behavior, recommend condition 3. The captain answers instantly. Set condition 3, man all key stations. The ship responds at once. Steel doors secure, consoles brighten. Every watchstander moves with more speed, but no one rushes. This is not a drill, and it is not panic. It is procedure. Out on the water, the 5 ships keep closing. Long-range optical cameras swing toward the horizon. At first, there is only a line of gray shapes. Then the details sharpen. Angular superstructures, military hulls. Identification comes quickly. Contacts confirmed. Russian Navy. On the bridge, there is no visible reaction, no commentary. The information is logged, time-stamped, and acknowledged. The approaching ships do not hail, they do not maneuver to pass. They spread just wide enough to control angles, then tighten just enough to narrow choices. This is no accident. 5:20. Range updates come in at steady intervals. Every report brings the numbers lower. Closest point of approach calculations begin to change. The projected tracks do not cross, but they compress. It is pressure without impact, presence without a formal declaration. The captain watches the plot and speaks evenly. Maintain course and speed. That order matters. Any sudden move now would suggest uncertainty. The ship stays steady, holding a constant vector as the situation around it grows tighter. Below deck, electronic warfare teams begin recording. They are not interfering. They are not disrupting. They are simply listening. Every radar sweep from the approaching ships, every emission, every pattern. Out here, information has value. 5:23. One of the Russian ships increases speed again. Not dramatically, but enough to stand out. Another shifts its bearing by just a few degrees, tightening the lateral gap. CIC updates the bridge. Contact 3 altering course. Intent appears deliberate. The 5-inch gun mount turns slightly. Only a few degrees. Not enough to target, not enough to threaten, just enough to be seen through binoculars. Just enough to say, we are alert. Radio calls go out on international maritime channels. Clear, professional. No reply. The sea stays calm, and that may be the most unsettling part. Flat water leaves no excuses. Every wake, every turn, every choice is visible. 5:26. The distances continue to shrink. The Russian formation now resembles a loose arc ahead and off both sides. Not a full encirclement, not yet. On the bridge, no one speaks unless there is a reason. Every action is entered into the log, every maneuver is captured by multiple systems. This is no longer only about what may happen next. It is also about documenting what has already happened. One of the contacts edges in closer than the rest. Its bow angle shifts slightly, reducing separation. CIC breaks the quiet. Captain, intent is trending more assertive. The captain studies the plot for one more second. Continue to log. No deviation. Outside, 5 naval ships move across open water, their wakes trailing behind them like deliberate lines on a chart. No shots fired, no shouted warnings, no sudden turns, only speed, bearing, and distance. 5:28. The box is tightening, and everyone aboard understands that this moment has moved beyond routine. 5:29 local time. The distances keep falling. On the surface plot, the 5 Russian ships no longer look like separate tracks. Their movement now has rhythm. One changes speed, another adjusts bearing, a third holds steady, anchoring the pattern. It is a box being drawn in slow motion. Inside the Combat Information Center, closest point of approach calculations update again. The numbers remain technically acceptable. Still defensible, but the margins are getting thinner. CPA trending down across multiple contacts. The report remains calm and factual. No one needs to raise a voice when the data speaks clearly. On the bridge of the USS George Washington, the captain studies the geometry. 5 ships, 5 vectors, none of it accidental. This is not a normal transit encounter. This is positioning. 5:31. One Russian ship moves toward the carrier's port quarter. Another shifts wider to starboard, opening lateral distance just enough to deny an easy turn. Ahead, two ships hold offset forward arcs, limiting movement without forcing direct contact. It is pressure without touch. The carrier maintains course and speed. That choice is critical. Any sudden maneuver now would damage the record. From this point on, every movement is evidence, and the George Washington is capturing it in real time. Below decks, electronic warfare operators continue passive collection. Radar emissions from the Russian ships are clean, disciplined, and controlled. No fire control locks. No overt targeting. Still, everything is being logged. 5:33. Bridge-to-bridge radio calls go out again using clear international language. English first, then repeated. Silence. That silence is noted. At sea, silence is never meaningless. Long-range cameras now reveal finer deck details. Antennas, gun mounts, crew silhouettes against steel. The ships are close enough for small motions to be visible, but not close enough to touch. That is the dangerous range. 5:35. One of the Russian ships accelerates briefly, cutting across the carrier's projected path before easing back. Not enough to force immediate action, but enough to test the response. No response comes. The USS George Washington remains steady, a constant mass at the center of a shifting pattern. Her escorts mirror the posture, keeping disciplined spacing without breaking formation. This is restraint, but it is not weakness. Inside CIC, a new report reaches the bridge, multiple contacts adjusting to maintain enclosure geometry. The word enclosure is chosen carefully. It is not an accusation. It is a description. 5:38. The five-ship formation is now impossible to mistake. Not a perfect circle, not a hard block. A flexible containment pattern, shifting with every update to the carrier's movement. The box is in place. On the bridge, the captain gives one instruction. Prepare aviation. There is no urgency in his voice, no drama. But the flight deck crews move immediately. 5:40. Below, aviation teams begin launch prep procedures. Rotor blades are checked. Sensors come online. Systems are aligned. This is not a launch yet. It is readiness. A helicopter on deck changes the situation. Not because of firepower, but because of perspective. Eyes in the air can break a box at sea. The Russian ships keep their silence. 5:42. Another subtle shift. One of the forward Russian ships moves a few degrees inward, narrowing the channel ahead. The motion is small, calculated, and instantly logged. CPA predictions tighten again. Inside CIC, the watch supervisor speaks without looking up. Captain, intent remains controlled but sustained. That word matters. Sustained intent means this is not a passing test. It's no longer a random moment. This is a deliberate phase. 5:45. The 5-inch gun mount shifts again, almost invisible unless you're looking for it. A quiet signal, nothing more. Cameras catch the adjustment. Logged, time-stamped, stored. The ocean stays perfectly calm. No waves, no wind, nothing to blur responsibility. Every movement now belongs entirely to the ships. 5:47. The Russian formation holds steady. No vessel breaks off, no one retreats, no one pushes too far. It's discipline facing discipline. On the bridge, the captain keeps his focus on the data, not the horizon. The real situation isn't outside, it's on the screens. Maintain steady course. The carrier holds its ground. 5:49. Electronic warfare reports come in, low and controlled. Emission patterns remain consistent. No targeting modes detected. That line remains untouched. The silence stretches. Minutes pass with no resolution, and that silence itself becomes pressure. Every second the formation holds is a message. 5:51. The helicopter crew finishes their checks. Everything is green. The deck stays quiet. No launch yet. The Russian ships maintain their positions, holding the enclosure at a distance that looks safe on paper, but feels far different in reality. 5:53. The shape is complete. 5 warships, 1 carrier. Open ocean. No shots, no words, just geometry. And everyone involved understands that the next move will change everything. 5:54 local time. The formation holds. The 5 Russian ships keep their spacing, neither closing in nor drifting apart. The structure remains intact, flexible, but controlled. On the bridge of the USS George Washington, nothing outward changes. Course steady, speed constant, no new commands. Below deck, the ship listens. Electronic warfare teams work in silence. Displays fill with clean, disciplined signals. Search radars sweep. Navigation radars pulse. No targeting locks. No sudden spikes. No shifts in frequency. Restraint speaks louder than action. 5:56. The helicopter crew reports ready. Engines idle. Sensors active. The aircraft remains secured to the deck, but now the option exists. And that option matters. Aviation isn't escalation. It's visibility. 5:58. One Russian ship makes a subtle move. sliding laterally to starboard, creating space that wasn't there before. Not retreat, not advance, adjustment. CIC logs it instantly. Contact 2 altering lateral position, maintaining enclosure. The shape still exists, but now it's breathing. 5:59. The captain waits. In moments like this, speed doesn't win. Timing does. 6:01. Another Russian ship responds, shifting just enough to compensate. The formation tightens again, cleaner than before. This is choreography. On the bridge, the gun mount stays still. No need for further movement. The carrier remains steady. No hesitation. 6:03. The sea is still flat. The sky begins to lighten. Conditions that remove all excuses. Conditions that leave only intent. Radio calls go out again. Same wording, same calm delivery. No response. Now, silence is clearly a decision. 6:05. The order comes. Calm, precise. Launch aviation. No buildup, no emphasis. The flight deck comes alive. Chains release. Rotor blades begin to turn. The sound spreads across the deck and out over the water. Sound changes everything. 6:07. The helicopter lifts smoothly into the morning air. No rush, no sudden movement. It climbs slowly, gaining altitude before moving forward. From above, everything looks different. From above, patterns break. 6:09. The aircraft moves ahead, crossing the carrier's bow and angling toward the nearest Russian ship. Not aggressive, not confrontational, just presence. Sensors activate immediately. High-resolution optics, infrared systems. Everything recorded, everything time-stamped. On the Russian deck, movement becomes visible. Heads turn upward. A figure steps toward the bridge wing. Nothing is hidden now. 6:11. One Russian ship adjusts course slightly, another follows, just a degree or two. The formation begins to shift. CIC reports it. Multiple contacts adjusting relative position. No extra commentary needed. 6:13. The helicopter holds position at altitude. No sharp turns, no aggressive motion. The message isn't force, it's exposure. From the air, the carrier's steady path is undeniable. From the air, the adjustments look reactive. 6:15. Electronic warfare detects a brief change. A small increase in power, then back down. Testing. Probing. Still controlled. 6:17. One Russian ship reduces speed slightly, enough to affect spacing. The edges of the formation begin to loosen. The helicopter drifts laterally, maintaining position over open water between ships. Its camera stays locked downward. Everything is visible now. 6:19. The formation no longer looks intentional. It looks maintained. And that difference matters. Maintaining structure requires effort. Effort reveals pressure. 6:21. Another adjustment. Another correction. The Russian ships are working harder now to keep the shape together. The carrier does nothing. That contrast stands out. 6:23. The helicopter makes a slow, wide circle. No signals, no targeting, just observation. On the bridge, the captain watches the data shift. 6:25. CIC reports again. Captain, enclosure integrity degrading. That's the first clear turning point. The formation isn't gone, but it's no longer stable. 6:27. One Russian ship increases its distance slightly. Not a withdrawal, just a margin of safety. Another tries to compensate, but the timing doesn't match. The symmetry begins to slip. Discipline remains. Control starts to strain. 6:29. The helicopter holds steady. Engines constant. Sensors active. No shots fired. No voices raised. No declarations. But the pattern has changed. Sound met discipline. And discipline holds. 6:30 local time. From the bridge of the USS George Washington, the picture is no longer symmetrical. The 5 Russian ships are still there, still close, still moving. But the enclosure they maintained for nearly an hour is no longer clean. It begins with one ship, a small course correction, slightly too sharp, slightly too late. On the surface plot, its path bends inward, crossing a line that had held steady since the formation first took shape. It's only a few degrees, but it forces reactions. CIC catches it instantly. Contact 4 altering course unexpectedly, and that word, unexpectedly, carries weight. 6:32. The nearest Russian ship reacts first, increasing speed to keep the spacing intact. Another immediately checks its bearing, adjusting to avoid closing the gap too quickly. The rhythm is gone now. The formation is no longer acting ahead of the moment. It is reacting to it. From above, the helicopter captures the change as it happens. The arc that once looked sharp and intentional now shows uncertainty. Wake patterns begin to overlap where they had stayed clean before. Distances start to vary. This is what pressure looks like on open water. 6:34. The carrier stays on course. That choice matters even more now. Any move by the George Washington would reset the picture and give the other side a ready-made explanation. By remaining steady, the carrier leaves every correction in Russian hands. Every change becomes part of the record. 6:36. One of the Russian ships briefly reduces speed, not enough to break away, just enough to prevent its own formation from tightening too much. The ship behind it reacts a moment late and opens the spacing wider than intended. CIC reports it evenly. Enclosure asymmetry increasing. The box is starting to bend. 6:38. The helicopter adjusts slightly, recentering its orbit to keep all 5 ships in view. No low pass, no aggressive approach, just observation. But that presence overhead magnifies the imbalance. What once felt controlled now looks exposed. 6:40. Another correction follows, and this one is easier to see. A Russian ship alters outward, opening a lane that had not been there before. For the first time, the enclosure leaves room to move. No one takes it. Not yet. 6:42. Electronic warfare logs register short spikes in emissions. Not targeting, not lock-ons, just increased power. Pressure is starting to show in the signals. 6:44. On the bridge, the captain speaks quietly. Continue steady. Log all deviations. There is no need for a stronger order. The situation is already speaking for itself. 6:46. The Russian ships try to rebuild the geometry. 2 adjust at the same time, overshooting slightly in opposite directions. Their spacing no longer matches. Their headings no longer line up cleanly. The enclosure begins to split between what it was meant to be and what it has become. From above, the helicopter records the mismatch. One ship's wake now cuts across another's projected path. Not dangerously, but clearly. At sea, clearly is enough. 6:48. One Russian ship slows again, this time in a way that cannot be missed. The ship beside it compensates too late. The box gives way, not suddenly, not dramatically, but unmistakably. 6:50. Distances begin to open. CPA predictions widen across the board. CIC sends the update to the bridge. Contacts opening separation. Enclosure no longer sustained. That is the turning point. No announcement follows, no dramatic declaration, just a change in the data. 6:52. The helicopter widens its orbit, no longer needing to monitor a tight pattern. The air picture becomes simpler. On the carrier, the deck remains calm. No celebration, no visible reaction. This moment does not end with noise. It ends because the geometry stops holding. 6:54. One Russian ship turns outward, committing to open water. Another follows soon after, not immediately, but without resistance. The remaining ships adjust as well, abandoning the enclosure and settling into parallel courses at greater distance. The moment is over. 6:56. The carrier continues on the same course and at the same speed it held from the beginning. That is the final contrast. Nothing about the USS George Washington changes the outcome except consistency. 6:58. The helicopter receives the call to prepare for recovery. Mission complete without contact, without words, without a single shot. 6:59. The surface plot clears. 5 warships remain on radar, but no longer as a box. Just separate ships under observation. The moment everything changed did not come with a warning, a transmission, or a dramatic move. It came when one error forced another, and discipline carried the rest. 7 a.m. local time. The ocean looks exactly as it did an hour earlier. Flat, open, indifferent. On the surface plot, the 5 Russian warships are still visible, but the geometry that defined the encounter is gone. Distances increase, bearings drift apart. What had been a coordinated enclosure has dissolved into parallel movement. Nothing dramatic marks the shift. No radio call announces it, no maneuver celebrates it, no weapon marks the moment. That silence is the point. 7:02. In CIC, watchstanders continue logging everything, every deviation, every speed change, every moment of hesitation after the enclosure began to fail. This phase matters as much as the standoff itself, because what never happened matters. 7:04. No fire control radar appears, no launch systems open, no warning shots are fired. Those details are logged with everything else. At sea, restraint is not passivity. It is control under observation. 7:06. The helicopter lands smoothly back on deck. Rotors slow. Chains are secured again. The aircraft never crossed into a space that needed explanation. Its role was vision. That role is complete. 7:08. Below deck, electronic warfare teams begin organizing what they collected. Radar signatures, emission patterns, timing, maneuver correlation, shifts in signal strength. None of this becomes spectacle. All of it becomes analysis. This is how these encounters continue long after the ships separate. 7:10. On the bridge, the captain studies the plot one last time. The carrier never changed course, never changed speed, never changed posture beyond readiness. That consistency now defines the story. In any review that follows, every correction made by the Russian ship stands on its own. Every adjustment is theirs. That matters. 7:12. The surface picture stabilizes. The warships continue on diverging tracks. Still monitored, still tracked, but no longer engaged with one another. The moment has passed. What remains is the record. 7:14. There is no shipwide announcement, no speech, no summary. The crew does not need one. This was never about forcing anyone back. It was about denying control. 7:16. In the quiet that follows, the difference between escalation and dominance becomes clear. Escalation chases a reaction. Dominance has the patience to wait. One risks losing the narrative, the other builds proof. 7:18. The ocean returns to anonymity. The encounter fades into watch rotations, reports, and log entries. But the data remains. 7:20. In future assessments, no one will care who sounded louder or who moved first. They will look at who held course, who absorbed pressure without yielding, and who forced the other side to keep adjusting. The answers are already there. 7:22. The most important actions of the morning are not the ones visible from outside the ship. They happen in restraint, in silence, and in the decisions deliberately not made. 7:24. No weapon is used. No international crisis is declared. No public statement is required. And yet, something is settled. 7:26. This is the part most people never see. Naval strength is often judged by visible force, but its real measure is found in what never had to happen. 7:28. The USS George Washington continues along its planned route, unchanged from the moment the first contacts appeared on radar. That continuity is not accidental, it is doctrine. 7:30. 5 warships approached, 5 warships tested the space. 5 warships moved away without forcing an answer. What did not happen is what defines the encounter. No collision, no escalation, no mistake, only discipline meeting pressure, and lasting longer.